Hi, my name is Edelman and I am from Livingston, New Jersey, and this is my NCSY story. Over the past 4 years, NCSY has meant a lot to me and it has impacted me in so many ways. It has made me a better person and given me the opportunity to make amazing friends, meet lots of new people, and most importantly, learn more about Judaism. While I've met tons of amazing teens and advisors along the way, there's one person who got me involved in NCSY, and she's the person who I always look up to. I remember the summer before freshman year, I had an orientation for school where I was introduced to the hundreds of clubs my school has to offer. Of course, the one club that stood out to me was the JSU club. I remember walking into the school gym with all the different club tables, and there she was, Jennifer Romanov. After a conversation that only lasted a few minutes, and I knew that the JSU club was the club that I really wanted to be a part of. From there, I joined NCSY, and Jen truly changed my life. Not only did she encourage me to come to so many events and Shabbat lunches and Saturday morning services, but she encouraged me to go on TJJ, which was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Growing up, my parents always wanted me to become closer with Judaism, and while I love celebrating holidays and going to temple as a family, I never was able to obtain that strong connection, and I never really understood why religion meant so much to them, but Jennifer changed that for me. She gave me that push I needed to get involved, and she allowed me to not only learn more about Judaism, but also about myself. After going on TJJ and being a part of NCSY the past 4 years, I finally appreciate and understand everything my parents have taught me my whole life. The little things like lighting Shabbat candles and saying Shema in the morning, these were always things I did because my parents kind of wanted me to do it. But now I can truly say that these are things I do because I want to do them myself. And I have Jen to thank for that. NCSY has taught me that there are always goals I can set for myself. There are so many things I can do to make the world a better place and to make me a better person, and NCSY really helped me see that.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much and welcome to the 4th annual Israeli Wine and Cheese event, spectacular, to benefit Metro West, NCSY, and JSU. My name is Michael Roeber, and I have been the former president of Congregation Etz Chaim in Livingston. I have been the former mayor of Livingston, but yet tonight, to be honored to host this event, top of the food chain. And it's incredible not only to host and to celebrate NCSY and JSU, but also to honor Wendy and Stuart Ashenberg and Jennifer Romanov. And although this is the 4th time we've had this wine and cheese event, like so much of this year, so many of us this year, no doubt tonight feels very different. We're gathering here tonight and watching instead of being in person, but yet you're in the comfort of your home. And there's something nice about that as well. Nonetheless, your participation and support is crucial to the success of NCSY. And I know personally, my daughter, since meeting Miriam, one of the most incredible ladies, is going and is involved in planning trips. And we're so grateful. But tonight we're going to honor other members of our community, both current and former, who have played vital roles in the success of NCSY in programming through COVID and beyond. So sit back, enjoy the brief program while you sip from your incredible wine and cheese packages that were delivered. Most of all, on behalf of NCSY and on behalf of all the teens and everyone involved, thank you for continuing to support NCSY and all their programs and your dedication.
Hello everybody, my name is Sasha Kisner and I'm a Livingston High School senior. I've been a part of NCSY ever since I went on a trip to Israel through the program called TJJ, and now I'm a part of NCSY's JLIT program, which stands for Jewish Leaders in Training. I love NCSY, I love the people, I love the programs, and I love learning more about spirituality and Judaism and my religion and history, and having such an enriching time here. I also wanted to thank everybody for coming and for supporting not only NCSY, but investing in me and my future. You all coming here invests in the scholarships, the opportunities, the programs that I was able to take that hundreds of other teens in Metro West will be able to take. Now enough about me, let's get to the real reason why we're here. Wine and cheese, ladies and gentlemen, here's Josh.
Hi, welcome to the NCSY Wine and Cheese Evening. I'm Joshua Reynolds, and I'll be helping you get the most out of the tasting box that you received. But first, I'd like to thank NCSY for having me, and also for the wonderful work that they do in the community and in the larger Jewish world. In your box, you're going to find a cheese board and 2 bottles of wine, one red and one white. Since we normally serve white wine like this under room temperature, or even rather cold, if you haven't already chilled your bottle, why don't you take this moment to pause your video and go and put your bottle in the freezer or the fridge for a while, just so that it can get cold enough to drink. And also you can take this time to open up that bottle of red and let it breathe. The reason why we do that is because when wine is exposed to oxygen in the atmosphere, a lot of the molecular compounds in the wine start chemical processes, and that changes the character of the wine. We're going to see how that works a little bit later. Are your wines ready to drink? Okay, let's go. When we're drinking wine, there are several aspects of the wine that we want to take into account so that we can really get the most out of the experience. Those are the alcohol, the acid, the tannin, the fruitiness, and the sweetness or dryness of the wine. Now, as self-evident as alcohol is as one of those things that makes you a little bit different, it also does actually affect the nature of the wine itself, because it has a different density than water and a lot of the other molecular compounds that are in wine. As a result, a wine with more alcohol generally feels like it has a bigger or more voluminous body. Alcohol also can be seen in the glass, in the rivulets of wine, which we'll take a look at later. And it also gives the wine a longer shelf life. In addition, because alcohol is made by the yeast eating the sugar found in the grapes, it does give wine a slight residual sweetness. Acid is another aspect of wine that we want to take into account. Acid gives wine its life, its vivacity. A wine without a proper acidic balance will feel dull, languid, and it won't be as thirst-quenching. Fruitiness is the aspect of the wine which closely resembles the notes and flavors of other fruits, and indeed vegetables or earth notes. But in this case, fruitiness specifically referring to those aspects like raspberries or blackberries or plums or apples that you might taste in a wine. Sweetness and dryness are a little self-evident. It's either sweet, mildly sweet, or dry. And while there is a range, there's a general accepted understanding of what is dry, what is sweet. And the wines we'll be trying tonight are dry wines. And that brings us to tannin, which will bring us to cheese. Tannin is a phenol which actually is related to the tannic acid used to tan leather products. And that's the reason why when you drink dry wine and some sweet wines, you have kind of a scrunchy feeling in your mouth. That's the tannin working. Too much tannin can be bitter, and it can feel awkward. It can feel like you've been being wrapped in shrink wrap. Too little tannin and a wine can feel flabby, unstructured. Tannin is not so much something that you taste, something that you feel and you sense in the wine. And because tannin is one of those mysterious aspects of wine which lends so much character, but which itself is so difficult to distinguish and so important, sometimes we need a little help. And that's where cheese comes in, because the fat and protein in milk is able to pair with and camouflage any excess tannins that exist in the wine, making it easier to drink. And that's why throughout history you've seen people drink wine and eat a bit of cheese. You ready to drink some wine? Great. We're going to start with a Chardonnay from Barcon. That's this bottle right here. And if you look at the bottle, you'll notice that this is a vintage 2019. It's important to remember the vintage of the wine you're drinking, because since wine takes up so much character from the environment that it's in, and because that environment changes year to year, a wine will generally be different from one year to another in most cases, especially when it's a single grape, like this Chardonnay that we're drinking now. Just a little bit about Barkan. It's actually one of the oldest extant vineyards, or at least vineyard operations, in Israel. It started with the Friedman Vineyard in 1899 at Petah Tikva. So let's take a look at this wine. As before, I said that alcohol affects how the wine looks in the glass. And hopefully you'll be able to get a close-up, but as you swirl wine around, which you don't need to do very much, you'll see that rivulets begin to form. And that happens because of the different densities and therefore the different evaporation points of the alcohol versus the water and other compounds in the wine. Now we're looking at the color, and it's a very nice kind of creamy gold. It's like a hazy sunny day. And that's a really good color to have on a Chardonnay. Now as we smell this wine and examine its bouquet, remember that taste is an olfactory sense. It's not just in your tongue, it's also in your nose and the top of your mouth. It's all connected. And in fact, actually, there's millions of receptors in your nose and the top of your mouth, whereas your tongue only has 7,000 or 8,000, maybe a few more, taste buds. And that's why smelling the wine definitely is a good way to jump in. And you get a nice bit of citrus and butter, which is typical of a Chardonnay and is a good thing to have. And you can definitely sense there's a good balance with the acid. And even though you don't smell the alcohol, you kind of feel the heaviness of it. All right, let's go ahead and take a drink. It's very nice. It's light but buttery. The citrus is there all the way through, and it has a nice finish. Chardonnay is a really nice white to enjoy in the summer, especially with a cheese plate or with some fish. And drinking it moderately cold definitely is the way to go. It doesn't need to be that cold because Chardonnay has a lot of subtle characteristics to it, which are coming out now. There's a bit more butter, and I would say some lime there, or lemon as well. Maybe a hint of passion fruit. All around, it's really delicious.
One cannot talk about Metro West, NCSY, and JSU and not mention Jennifer Romanov. As the director of Metro West, NCSY, and JSU for 4 years, Jennifer built Metro West and into one of the premier chapters of all of NCSY. She founded most of the JSU clubs we still run today. And once again, my team is going to participate in. Thank you, Jennifer. And together with her husband, Gedalia, opened her home and heart to hundreds, if not thousands of teens in our community. While we know Jennifer is continuing her Avodat HaKodesh, her important and holy work with the teens of South Florida, we still miss her every day. We are grateful for her continued mentorship of Miriam, who is taking this bull by the horn and doing a phenomenal job herself. And I know that our chapter and community will continue to be the beneficiaries of her dedication and passion. So please join me as we honor Jennifer Romanov with her Avodat HaKodesh Award.
When I first got to Livingston and started working for NCSY, the chapter was relatively small. I know there was some people in the community that had done NCSY before, so there was excitement about it, and there was some people that were there that were willing to help. We started with building some of our JSU clubs. We started in Livingston, we went to West Orange, we went to Morristown, and slowly but surely, a lot of JSU clubs started to pop up, and a lot more programs started to happen. We started with a small group of teens coming over to our house to play games, for oneg, for Shabbos meal. We took some out to pizza or coffee, and slowly but surely, that group started to grow because those friends were having a good time and they started to bring their friends, and we started to meet more students in the community, and we started to offer more programs. Between our challah bakes, our latte and learns at Chocolate Works, our bonfires at our 3 houses that we lived in Livingston, our Shabbos meals, our oneggs, our partnerships with the shul. There were so many different programs that started to happen as the years continued on.
One of the things that's so unique about Jennifer is her willingness and ability to mentor other staff from across the country. When I first started running JSU Club, Jennifer was a pro at that already. And I remember sitting here at a staff con. I was a new JSU coordinator in Maryland, and just sitting with Jennifer, listening to her plans, her ideas, the way she runs clubs, the way she engages with teens. And it struck me that to her, Avodas HaKodesh, the idea of working for Klal Yisrael, working for the Tzibur, was something that ran deeper than just her teens or her program. It was a passion, a love that she wanted to share with every Jewish teen. And her ability to work with other staff, to mentor other staff, to teach others, was something that she treasured so deeply.
I became an advisor when I was a sophomore in college, and Jennifer, immediately I got sent to her. She was my first contact, and it was an instant connection. I came to Latte and Learn at Chocolate Works, and she took the time to show me and introduce me to the teens and to make me feel comfortable. Even though it was my first event, she really made sure that I felt comfortable, I knew what I was doing, and that I should just have fun and just talk to teens. We actually have 7 JSU clubs. We have weekly programming, including Latte and Learn, including Shabbat programming, even during COVID, so everyone comes to my driveway. Summer programs, we have more and more teens going on summer programs to Israel every single year, and it's really all thanks to the work that Jennifer had built here in Metro West.
Looking back on NCSY and my high school experience in NCSY, I definitely think of Jen. Jen was one of the most amazing people and inspired me to do so many things in the Jewish community. She even inspired me to go on a summer trip to Israel called TJJ. I didn't really get much Jewish education as a kid and growing up, and the club meetings and just like the Latte and Learns every week would be my only source of learning. So Jen really made that really fun and just made me want to learn more and grow more.
Honestly, joining NCSY because of Jen, I've learned more about my Jewish heritage and definitely care more about Judaism than before NCSY and before Jen.
My first ever experience with Jen actually ended up being on a Shabbos. She was like, listen, I'm here because I run NCSY here in Livingston, and I think you would be awesome for this. You are gonna love it. And I said, are you joking with me? I'm in 7th grade, really? Come on now. And she was, no, trust me, this is gonna be your thing. You are gonna love this. And from that point on, I spent every Shabbos afternoon in Jen's driveway or in her house hanging out with her and Gedalia and all of our friends, and it ended up being that I was regional president. Despite her not being here for that, I credit that entirely to her.
She cared about every single kid. If something wasn't going the way that she felt would help her kids, trust me, I heard about it. And you know what I did when I heard about it? I smiled. I said, this is what NCSY is all about. Somebody like Jen that really cares about her kids, that literally gives her life for the kids. I begged Aryeh, please, let me just say Mazel Tov to Jen and tell her how much she's done for the kids in New Jersey, NCSY.
When parents started to stop by our house after a Shabbos meal when they were picking up their teens, or when I went to go say hi outside of our Latte and Learns, that's when our chapter really started to grow. I met so many adults in the community that were passionate about making sure that NCSY grew and NCSY was sustained. And for that, I am eternally grateful.
Walking into Livingston, when I first started here, the one question that everybody was asking, every shul rabbi, every parent, every teen, how are we going to replace Jennifer Romanov? How are we going to fill her shoes? Because in so many ways, Jennifer was larger than life in Livingston and the greater Metro West community. The clubs that she founded, the teens that she developed a relationship with, the mothers that she hung out with, the families that she inspired, were all part of Jennifer's extended family, and the impact that she had ripples throughout the community.
We were in the Livingston community for 5 years. My husband and I had just gotten married, and we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. But it was really a blessing in disguise because there were so many great families there that welcomed us with open arms. In addition, there were so many teens that were so excited about NCSY and getting involved in JSU and being a part of our various programs. We hope that we made a lasting impact on the teens that we met there. They were so special, they meant so much to us, and we know that we'll be connected to them in their lives forever.
So let's start on our next bottle, the bottle of red. Now, the Barcon that we tried before is a Chardonnay, and it didn't tell us where in Israel it comes from, which gives me a good time to tell you about Terroir, because our Isaac's Ram Cabernet, which comes from the Hebron Heights vineyard, does tell us exactly where it comes from, right outside of Hebron. Terroir is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but generally what it means is the combination of factors that go into the production of wine, and the geology of the land that it comes from, the climate that it grew up in, the specific grape varietal, and the person who makes it. And all of these factors influence the wine so much that even small things like singing to the grapes while they're ripening is actually taken very seriously in large portions of the world, and the quality of the land in many places is rated. And so a wine may be more expensive because it comes from a vineyard that is rated more highly than those nearby or in other places. While Israel doesn't do that, Hebron Heights surely has some of the best vineyard land in Israel. Started by Marcel Marciano several decades ago with some French investors, their aim was to produce old world style wines in Israel of great and exceptional quality, and in my opinion they definitely succeeded. Not only does Hebron have an archaeological record of winemaking going back almost 6,000 years, but also, as you've probably found at some point in your learning, it's mentioned very often in Tanakh and Gemara and the rest of our literature as being a fantastic place to grow grapes and make wine. Hebron is one of the great places for a number of reasons, and one of those is its altitude and its particular position between two bodies of water, that being the Mediterranean and the Dead Sea. That means that it gets a lot more moisture than other parts of Israel, and because of its high altitude, the growing season is a little bit less harsh for the grapes, which means that they can develop for a little bit longer than grapes in other parts of Israel, which might be scorched by the very hot sun. That comes out in the wine, giving it a more subtle character, more rounded and balanced earth notes, and a more accessible and appreciable tannin and acid balance. So let's give this a little pour. And you'll notice that the color on this is a really beautiful crimson, almost purple, which is definitely characteristic of a good cab. Now, before we mentioned that you want to let reds breathe because of the way that wine reacts with the atmosphere that it's opened up into. Wine actually also is reacting with itself inside the bottle as molecular compounds are created and destroyed through the shelf life of the wine. We generally let younger wines breathe for longer time than older ones because they haven't had as much time to develop in the bottle itself and will therefore take a longer time in some ways reacting with their atmosphere. This wine has some age on it. That means that it's had time to develop in the bottle, which means that it's going to have more nuanced and subtle characteristics that are better balanced with each other. And that'll just make eating it with the cheese that much more enjoyable. Now again, if we take a look, we're going to start seeing those rivulets forming. And this would be a good time to notice the difference between how those form in the red versus the white, if you're interested in that. But let's give it a whiff. There's a wonderful heaviness to the nose on this wine. It's full with lots of fruit and lots of other notes, such as a hint of smoke and some nice milk chocolate. Okay, let's go ahead and take a little sip. That is a delicious cab, and its rounded earth notes definitely make you think of that lush area around Hebron where this wine comes from. It's also got some delicious berry on there. I would say blackberry with a hint of raspberry. And there's some nice spices and herbs that are definitely running around. Now, while I'm throwing all of these descriptive terms around, if you don't taste them, that's okay. This is my job. But if you're interested, just try to pick up notes as they come along. That way, over time, you can develop a sense of where a wine is coming from and where it's going and what it pairs really well with because of the different flavors that are going on in the wine. There's definitely a very well-balanced acid and tannin and fruitiness, and this is definitely a good dry wine. I'd like to thank you for watching this NCSY Wine and Cheese event, and I'd like to again thank NCSY for bringing me, Joshua Reynolds, on to do it. I hope you have a wonderful evening. I hope you really enjoy the wines. Thank you.
We began last year stronger than ever in New Jersey NCSY. We opened more JSU clubs in public high schools around the state, bringing Jewish community to teens inside their school community. We ran our first ever New Jersey NCSY Yarchei Kallah, bringing yeshiva day school teens and public school teens together for a weekend of learning. We had more teens on NCSY summer programs going to Israel and domestic programs than ever before. We had more than 10 NCSY Chesed missions, disaster relief missions to Puerto Rico, Houston, New Orleans, and others to help rebuild communities affected by natural disasters. We had weekly programming and monthly programming, Shabbat programming, latte and learnings, educational programming, social programming. We were seeing and impacting more teens than ever before. Then COVID-19 hit, and we were forced to completely reimagine what NCSY is and what our programming could be. While COVID-19 will forever be remembered as the year of great distance, for us at NCSY, through our innovation and programming, and most importantly, through the love and care that our staff showed to every single team, COVID-19 will forever be remembered as the year of great connection for our teens and their families.
One of the pillars of the annual Wine and Cheese celebration is honoring individuals and couples and families who have made an impact in our community. Wendy and Stuart Aschenberg are stalwarts of the community whose love for NCSY has begun way back when Stuart was an NCSYer himself just a few years ago. Most recently, Wendy and Stuart have championed the NCSY as parents themselves with their daughter Cecilia, involvement as a teen, and as the regional president last year. Through it all, Wendy and Stuart have been passionate supporters and friends of NCSY. Join me as we honor Wendy and Stuart Aschenberg as Parents of the Year.
I've been part of NCSY since I was in 7th grade. NCSY has meant a lot to me through the years. 7th and 8th, all the way through high school, public school. If it wasn't for NCSY, I wouldn't have been involved in Yiddishkeit. Being the parent of an NCSYer is definitely a different experience than being an NCSYer as a kid. You get to see the back end of how NCSY operates and how it's changed over the years. They do a wonderful, beautiful programming and getting the kids involved. New Jersey NCSY has really gotten and pulled our kids into it over the years. Seeing Cecilia become regional president was something that warmed my heart because my love for NCSY and how much it meant to me as a kid. We've always felt it was important to host and to be involved with NCSY, and we would do whatever we needed to do in order to make that happen, hosting regional Shabbaton, hosting backyard barbecues and fire pit experiences.
My first experience with NCSY was shortly after we moved into Livingston and started thinking about what our children's social opportunities would be like as they grew. I had heard Stuart speak about his time in NCSY forever, and I knew how excited he was about it. So together we looked into the opportunities, saw that it was in West Orange, and were very interested in bringing it to Livingston as well. And all 3 of our children have benefited at some point and will continue to benefit from NCSY. Cecilia, as our first child, was as eager a person to come to NCSY as you could ever find. And whenever there was an activity, she was the first to sign up. There are a couple of special activities for her, first being the LEAD Fellowship. It was very exciting for her to join that group of people and be able to take trips to other communities like Buffalo and work in their communities and their Hebrew schools and their synagogues and see what she and her friends could bring to them. As a parent, it was very exciting for me to see a 15-year-old child being able to have the leadership opportunities and the growth and the experience that she got from that fellowship. We're the parents of both a day school child and a public school child. And so wherever there was an NCSY program, our children were ready to benefit. Maury has spent time with the Jewish Student Club. I confess he's probably only there for the pizza, but it doesn't matter because he still got there. And either way, whether it was Cecilia who was eager and anticipating and waiting for that email or that next opportunity, or Maury who really had to be drawn in a little bit more, both of them were able to find places where they could socialize with other Jews, have fun, and still be connected. And that's really quite special.
Ever since I was little, I've heard about NCSY. My father served on regional board when he was in high school, and NCSY was such a big part of his life. He was so excited when I finally was able to join NCSY. He loved every second of hearing me tell stories of what we did at NCSY that week, and he loved the smile on my face that I got every time I got home from an event. And I'm so proud that I got to follow in his footsteps, and I even beat him a little bit as regional president. But you know, no big deal.
I see my sister and my brother have so much fun doing NCSY, and I've learned a lot about it from my Abba, so yeah, I'm really excited to join it one day.
Starting off as a new regional director, my first regional president was Cecilia Aschenberg, and it must have been about 2 months in when Cecilia told me that her parents wanted to host a regional board Shabbaton. And my first Shabbaton as a regional director of New Jersey NCSY was in the home of Stuart and Wendy Aschenberg. And what struck me most about that Shabbaton was how invested Stuart and Wendy were with the growth and trajectory of their children, how proud they were of Cecilia's involvement in NCSY, how much they appreciated the growth that Cecilia had gone through as a person and as a Jew through NCSY, and it was so inspiring to see how much they cared. The fact they welcomed all of us into their homes, hosted a Shabbaton for us, and taught us and mentored us. I looked to Stuart and Wendy that entire year. I knew I could count on them for a phone call, for encouragement, for constructive criticism when was necessary, to help guide me through. And it was really so amazing to have that ally, that support of Stuart and Wendy throughout.
I've been in NCSY for so long that now I had Stuart in NCSY. Really, I would say more I was his advisor. And now Cecilia, really I was on the administration. And the pride that he takes in his child, and his wife Wendy, of course, also. When we gave Cecilia her award virtually, you saw them together, the smiles that they had in their face, how proud they were of their daughter. And I think Stuart takes a lot of pride in the fact that his kid is involved in NCSY like he was.
It's a great honor to be involved and to be honored as Parents of the Year. And we'd like to thank Miriam and Rabbi Wialgas for all that they've done for NCSY here in Metro West and New Jersey.
That's it, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate all the support that you have given us to Metro West, NCSY, and JSU. Thank you again to our gracious host, Mike Roeber. Thank you to Stuart and Wendy Ashenberg and Jennifer Romanov. And most of all, thank you to the teens who really are just a continued source of inspiration and just make it possible for NCSY to keep on going. Have a good night, everyone.